Michael Carter thought he knew everything about his diner, but when he went undercover to uncover the truth, he stumbled upon a shocking betrayal that would change everything. From his employees plotting to frame an elderly dishwasher, to uncovering the painful secrets of loyalty, sacrifice, and betrayal, Michael is forced to confront the darker side of his business. Will he be able to save Henry and the soul of his diner before it's too late? This is a story of redemption, justice, and discovering what really matters. Keep watching to find out how one man's kindness turned a business upside down. Michael Carter tugged the worn baseball cap low over his eyes, his heart racing as he pushed open the door to Carter's diner. The familiar bell jingled above him. Ding. But not one employee even glanced his way. Perfect. His disguise was foolproof. Faded jeans, a threadbare flannel shirt, and 3 days of scruffy stubble. Who'd guess he was the owner? For 15 years, he'd poured his soul into this place, turning a rundown greasy spoon into a cherished local gem with 4 locations across the city. But lately, he'd been too swamped with expansion plans and investor meetings to visit. Something was gnawing at him, though. Customer reviews were glowing, yet employee turnover was climbing, and profits at this flagship spot were slipping despite packed tables. What was going on? Table for one, or a waitress muttered, barely looking up from her notepad. Counter's fine, Michael growled, roughening his voice on purpose. He slid onto a stool at the counter's far end, where he could watch the whole chaotic scene unfold. The lunch rush was in full swing, waitresses darting between tables, line cooks barking orders, the cash register pinging like a metronome. It looked like business as usual, but something felt off. Wrong. That's when he spotted Henry, the elderly dishwasher, moving with a quiet grace that stood out against the frenzy. While everyone else scrambled, Henry stacked plates with care, his gnarled hands steady as a surgeon's, rail-thin. With a shock of white hair, he had to be in his mid-70s, yet those sharp eyes under bushy brows missed nothing. Who was this guy? What can I get you? A young cashier, her name tag reading Megan, finally noticed Michael. Turkey Club and coffee, he said, sliding a crumpled 20 across the counter. As Megan punched in his order, he nodded toward Henry. He'd been here long? Megan rolled her eyes so hard it was almost audible. Forever. Should have retired ages ago if you ask me. Michael sipped his coffee, his gaze locked on Henry for the next hour. The old man never stopped. Not once. He didn't even flinch when a busboy dumped a tray of dishes into his station, splashing grimy water all over his soaked apron. Michael's jaw tightened. He saw how customers lit up, calling Henry by name as they passed the dish window, and how Henry always flashed a warm smile or kind word back. Was this guy for real? Just before the lunch rush faded, something caught Michael's eye. A young woman with 2 small kids approached the register, her face crumpling as she opened her wallet. Oh no, what next? She whispered something to Megan, who frowned and waved over another cashier. Troy, his name tag said. Their hushed, annoyed voices carried, and the young mother's cheeks flushed with shame, her kids clinging to her, sensing her distress. Michael leaned forward. Then Henry glanced over from the dish station. Without a second's pause, he dried his hands and shuffled to the register. Michael couldn't hear the words, but he saw Henry slip some bills from his pocket to Megan. The mother's shoulders sagged with relief as she hugged her kids and left, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you, Henry," she called. Michael's heart swelled. What kind of man does that? That's the 3rd time this week, Troy hissed to Megan, loud enough for Michael to catch. Old fool's gonna go broke saving strays. Megan snickered cruelly. As if he's not already broke. Bet he sleeps in that junker car of his. Michael's hands clenched around his coffee mug, his knuckles whitening. How dare they? The manager, Patricia, a frazzled woman Michael vaguely recalled hiring 2 years back, bustled past, oblivious to the exchange. For hours, Michael kept watching. Henry stayed long after his shift should have ended, scrubbing neglected corners with a focus that put others to shame. Twice more, he quietly covered for customers in need, once for a teenager whose card got declined, and again for an elderly man fumbling with prices, clearly confused. Why would he do that? Michael wondered, his curiosity burning. Why does he do that? He finally asked a regular sitting nearby, nodding toward Henry. The man, Ron, had been coming to the diner for decades. He said, "Henry, he's good people. Lost his wife 5 years ago to cancer. Wiped out their savings. Won't take charity though, too proud. So he works even with his arthritis acting up. Ron shook his head, his voice heavy. Breaks my heart hearing these kids mock him. They don't make him like Henry anymore. Michael's throat tightened. This was more than he'd bargained for. As the afternoon dragged on, Michael noticed Henry wincing when he thought no one saw, rubbing his lower back after bending. But complain? Never. He didn't slow down, not even a bit. When a young waitress dropped a tray crash, Henry was there with a mop, waving off her apology. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he said gently. "Accidents happen." Troy, passing by, muttered under his breath. "Yeah, 'cause useless old men belong in nursing homes." The waitress shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing, as Troy sauntered off, chuckling. Michael's blood boiled. How could they be so heartless? By 5 out, the dinner shift crew trickled in. Henry should have been long gone, but there he was, tackling the grease traps. A nasty job meant for the night team. "Henry, go home," Patricia called, exasperated, as she wrapped up her shift. "Night crews got this." "Just finishing up," Henry replied calmly. "Jake's sick again. Don't mind staying." Patricia sighed, clearly used to this. Michael's gut twisted. Was this normal? Nursing his third coffee, Michael's eyes narrowed as he caught Troy and Megan whispering at the counter's end. Sneaking glances at Henry, their sly smirks and furtive looks screamed trouble. Alarm bells rang in Michael's head. What were they up to? Suddenly Megan marched to the register, her face a mask of fake concern. She called Troy over, and they made a big show of counting the drawer, their frowns deepening. "We're short again," Troy announced loudly, drawing eyes from nearby tables. "Third time this week." Patricia, about to leave, spun around. "How much?" $42, Megan said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Same as Tuesday." Thursday was 35. Michael's gaze flicked to Henry, who straightened up, a flicker of worry crossing his weathered face. "Oh no." Michael's stomach churned. Something ugly was brewing. This kind, quiet man who'd spent his day helping others stood alone at his station, clueless that he was being watched, not just by Michael, but by 2 scheming employees who'd marked him as disposable. Michael's heart pounded. He'd come here for business answers, but what he'd found was far bigger, far darker. Staring at Henry's dignified silhouette against the harsh kitchen lights, he made a vow. "I'll uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt." The next day, Michael was back at Carter's Diner, slipping in during the mid-afternoon lull. He picked a booth near the counter, keeping his disguise-worn clothes, cap pulled low. Henry was already at it, moving a bit slower today. Michael caught him rubbing his wrist when he thought no one was looking. Was he in pain? Megan and Troy were on shift too, their heads together at the register whenever things quieted down. Michael ordered coffee and pie, hiding behind a newspaper as he eavesdropped. The diner was nearly empty, just a few regulars and a guy tapping away on his laptop. Troy leaned against the counter by Megan's register, his voice low but clear enough for Michael's booth. "Check the records, old man. Henry's been here 7 years, he said. 7 years washing dishes. Pathetic, right?" Megan snorted. "Pathetic's him playing hero for deadbeats who can't pay, like that single mom yesterday." "What, with his social security pennies?" Troy laughed. "Bet he lives off cat food to save cat." Michael's grip on his mug tightened, his knuckles bone white. He'd built this diner to be a home for customers and staff alike. Hearing this cruelty from his own employees, it made his stomach lurch. "I bet he lives in his car," Megan whispered, her voice dripping with scorn. "That rusty Buick? Probably sleeps in the back seat." Troy snickered. "Nah, I'm betting on a cardboard box behind Walmart." "Either way," Megan hissed, "he's a problem." Patricia's noticing the register shortages. Their voices dropped lower, and Michael leaned in, straining to hear. "Here's the plan," Troy said, glancing around. "Henry slips cash into the register for customers who come up short, right? Patricia doesn't know that. She just sees the numbers don't add up." Megan's eyes gleamed. "So we make those numbers look worse?" "Bingo," Troy nodded. "Get her to catch him near the register at the wrong time, and she'll think he's stealing." Megan could barely hide her glee. "Genius." Michael's heart sank like a stone. They weren't just mocking Henry, they were plotting to frame him. But what? He wanted to leap up and yell, but instead he flipped a page of his newspaper, ears locked on their words. "Here's why," Troy said. "My cousin needs a job. Young guy, twice as fast as Grandpa over there. If Henry's gone, I bring him in. We split the referral bonus. Plus," Megan added, I'm done watching him shuffle around like a charity case. It's depressing. And the customers, "Oh, Henry, you're so kind. Oh, Henry, you're a saint. Makes me want to gag." "Tomorrow," Troy said. "Patricia's doing inventory, so she'll be all over the number. We'll make sure they're off and pin it on Henry." They sealed their scheme with a fist bump as a family walked in, splitting apart. Michael sat frozen, his coffee gone cold. Fury and heartbreak battled in his chest. How could they? For the rest of the afternoon, he watched Henry. The old man moved with purpose, despite wincing in pain, handling each task with care. When a waitress dropped plates, smash, Henry was there, cleaning up, shielding her from Patricia's irritation. When the coffee machine jammed, he stayed late to fix it. And when a teenager's card was declined, Henry slipped Megan some cash, thinking no one saw. "Why let that kid slide?" Troy asked Henry later, his tone mocking. Henry shrugged, his voice gentle but firm. "His mom lost her job last month. Kid's too proud for handouts. But he's hungry. A meal can change everything." Troy rolled his eyes as soon as Henry turned, mimicking him to Megan. Michael's heart ached. Henry was everything his diner was supposed to stand for: kindness, dignity, sacrifice. And these two were trying to destroy him. No way. He'd stop them. Tomorrow the truth would come out, and justice would be served at Carter's diner. As closing time loomed, Michael Carter paid his bill and slipped out of Carter's diner. But he wasn't going far. Not yet. He parked his sedan across the street, his heart heavy as he waited in the shadow. When Henry finally stepped out, nearly an hour passed, when his shift should have ended. Michael's chest tightened. Why was he still here so late? He watched Henry's ancient Buick sputter to life, coughing like it was on its last legs, and Michael followed at a careful distance. His headlights dimmed. Henry drove slowly through town, past cozy residential neighborhoods glowing with warmth, toward the gritty outskirts near the diner. But then wait. Henry veered onto a bumpy dirt road behind the commercial strip. Michael's pulse quickened. Where was he going? He switched off his headlights, navigating the rutted path by moonlight. The Buick rolled to a stop behind a cluster of trees, hiding a backlot from the main road. There, tucked away like a forgotten secret, stood a tiny dilapidated trailer, its paint peeling, its frames sagging from decades of neglect. Henry parked and climbed 3 rickety wooden steps that looked ready to collapse under his weight. The door jammed, forcing him to shove it open with his shoulder. A single flickering light bulb lit up inside, revealing a space so cramped Michael could hardly believe anyone lived there. His stomach churned. How could this be? Sitting in the darkness, shame crashed over Michael like a tidal wave. How had he never known? How had he, the owner, failed to ensure his employees had decent homes? Heart pounding, he later approached some regular customers, still in his disguise of worn clothes and a low cap. "That dishwasher, Henry, what's his story?" he asked an elderly couple, their faces kind but weary. "Lost his Martha 5 years ago to cancer," the woman said softly, her voice trembling. "They sold everything to pay those medical bills. He still sends money to the hospital every month." Michael's throat tightened. "Does he have family?" "A daughter in Seattle," the man replied. "She begs him to move in with her, but he won't. Says he'd be a burden. Proud man, too proud, if you ask me." Michael's heart ached. Henry was sacrificing everything. And for what? Driving home, Michael's resolve hardened. He wouldn't let Troy and Megan ruin a man like Henry for their selfish gain. By morning he'd have a plan to expose their scheme and bring justice to Carter's diner. Sleep dodged him that night, his mind haunted by Henry's stooped figure climbing those crumbling steps to a trailer smaller than Michael's walk-in closet. The contrast between his own cushy life and Henry's daily grind was unbearable. How had he let this happen? By dawn, Michael was a man on a mission, making call after call to set his plans in motion. He pulled into Carter's diner an hour before opening, watching employees trickle in. Henry was among the first, his wheezing Buick limping into the back lot. Despite what must have been a restless night in that cramped trailer, the old man moved with purpose, pausing only to rub his aching lower back before heading inside. Michael's heart twisted. How did he keep going? Instead of following, Michael drove to a nearby coffee shop to meet Ron, the regular who'd spoken so fondly of Henry. "Thanks for coming," Michael said, keeping his disguise. "I can't stop thinking about Henry's situation." Ron stirred his coffee slowly, his eyes known him almost 6 years. Started coming here right after his wife passed. Martha was his everything. High school sweethearts. Married 52 years. Cancer took it all. Everything? Michael asked,
his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything and more," Ron said, his voice thick. They had savings. A cute house on Maple Street. But Martha's cancer was brutal. Needed experimental treatments insurance wouldn't touch. Henry didn't hesitate. Sold the house. Drained his retirement. Even sold their car. Moved her to the best facility. Got her every treatment possible. "Did it help?" Michael pressed. "Gave them 8 more months together," Ron said, choking up. "Henry says those were the most precious months of his life. Even if they were the hardest. After she passed, the bills kept coming. Henry wouldn't declare bankruptcy. Said a debt's a debt, and he'd pay every cent. So he took the dishwashing job." Michael nodded, piecing it together. Ron continued. "Only place that hire a 70-year-old with arthritis and no restaurant experience. Works harder than guys half his age. That trailer, it's all he can afford while paying the hospital and sending money to his daughter. Pride." Michael murmured. "She doesn't even know how bad it is," Ron said. "Henry sends her diner photos. Says business is great. She thinks he's a manager." Each word hit Michael like a punch. He built Carter's Diner to be a family. A haven for staff and customers alike. When had he lost that vision? "There's more," Ron added, his voice grim. "That trailer park. Developers bought it. Residents have 60 days to get out. Henry hasn't told anyone at work." Michael's stomach dropped. "Where'll he go?" Ron shrugged. "Helpless. No clue. Rent sky high in this town. His daughter's begging him to move to Seattle. But he won't budge." "Why not?" Michael asked, desperate to understand. "The diner folks," Ron said simply. "They're his family now, and helping customers. Says it gives him purpose, even with so little to give." Michael's heart shattered. Henry was holding on for others, not himself. Thanking Ron, Michael headed to the diner. The morning rush in full swing. He slid into yesterday's booth, his eyes glued to the scene. Henry worked steadily at the dish station, sometimes bussing tables when the rush overwhelmed the staff. Despite what had to be constant pain, he only moved a bit slower than the younger crew. Meanwhile, Megan and Troy were executing their cruel plan. Michael watched, his blood boiling, as Troy miscounted change, pocketing small bills with a smirk. Megan accidentally voided real transactions, messing up the register totals. Each time they shot knowing glances at each other, sneering toward Henry. How could they be so vile? Around 11 Owen, a young mother with 3 kids, the same one Henry helped days ago, approached the register carefully counting change but coming up short. Her face flushed with shame. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to Megan. "I thought I had enough. Can I skip the tip to cover it?" Megan's smile was sickly sweet. "Oh, no need. I'm sure our dishwasher will cover it again." "Henry," she shouted, drawing every eye. "Customer needs your charity fund." The diner fell silent, the mother's humiliation palpable as her kids looked up confused. Michael's fists clenched. How dare she? Henry stepped out from the kitchen, reading the situation in a heartbeat. Without a word about Megan's cruelty, he pulled cash from his pocket and handed it to the woman. "Thank you," she murmured, eyes down. "I'll pay you back next week. I swear." "No rush, Amy," Henry said warmly. "Kids enjoying their summer break." Just like that, he turned her shame into a friendly chat, asking about her children's adventures and her recent job interview. By the time Amy left, her head was high again. Michael's heart swelled. But then he overheard Troy mutter to Megan, "Perfect, that's 15 more bucks to our total. Patricia's gonna lose it when she sees the shortage." Michael's rage flared. Enough was enough. He slipped outside, making a quick call to finalize his plan. When he returned, Patricia was out of the office, calculator in hand, her face grim. "The numbers aren't adding up," she announced. "We're short almost $100 this week." Troy jumped in, all fake concern. "I've noticed weird stuff at the registers. Maybe check the cameras." Patricia frowned. They'd been broken for months. Owner won't fund new ones. Michael's jaw tightened. That was news to him. He'd be talking to his regional manager. Prompt. "Well," Megan piped up, her voice dripping with insinuation. "I saw someone near the registers yesterday during my break. Someone who doesn't handle cash." Her glance toward the dishroom screamed Henry. Patricia's frown deepened. "You're saying Henry's stealing? That's not like him." "People get desperate," Troy said, feigning sympathy, "especially at his age. No retirement." Michael's gaze locked on Henry through the kitchen window, oblivious to the accusations as he scraped plates, his red, chapped hands moving with care despite the harsh chemical. That precision, that pride, how could they tarnish it? Right then Michael decided, Tomorrow wasn't just about exposing Troy and Megan. It was about rewriting how his diner ran, starting with ensuring no one like Henry ever lived in a trailer again. As he left, his shock had morphed into cold fury. Tomorrow there'd be a reckoning, not just for two heartless cashiers, but for his own failure to protect the people who built his success. Michael arrived at Carter's diner early the next morning, his third day undercover. Today was different. Today, justice would reign. He'd spent the night making calls, locking every detail into place. Dressed in his usual low-key clothes, he settled into his booth, eyes on the registers and dish room. The morning seemed normal at first. Henry arrived right on time, a bit stiffer than yesterday. Troy and Megan strolled in, whispering with sly smiles. Patricia paced between the kitchen and office, stressed about the missing cash. Michael's heart raced. It was almost time. At exactly 10:15, the door's bell chimed. A woman in her early 30s walked in, holding a 5-year-old girl's hand. Their clothes were neat but worn, shoes scuffed, a coat with a carefully mended sleeve. This was Jessica Miller, a single mom Michael had reached out to through a community program. She wasn't faking her struggle, raising her daughter alone on 2 jobs, but she'd agreed to help Michael today for a donation to her daughter's education fund. Jessica and little Lily took a booth near the counter. Megan swooped in, her customer service smile plastered. "Just a grilled cheese for my daughter and a soup for me, please," Jessica said softly. Michael leaned forward, ready for the next step in his plan to bring truth to light. 20 minutes later, Jessica Miller approached the register, her heart visibly sinking as she opened her wallet. Oh no. What now? Her face crumpled in what seemed like genuine distress, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry," she said to Megan, her eyes glistening. "I thought I had enough cash. My card got declined yesterday. Some bank glitch they're still sorting out. I'm $15 short." Megan's smile turned icy, her tone cutting. "We can't just give food away, ma'am. Maybe count your money before ordering next time, huh?" Jessica's eyes welled with tears, and her little daughter Lily looked up, her tiny face creased with confusion. Michael's heart ached from his boot. How could Megan be so cruel? Jessica's voice trembled as she pleaded. "Could I maybe wash dishes to cover it? I don't have anywhere else to turn." Megan's reply was sharp, like a slap. "We've got staff for that." From the dish window, Henry had been watching, his kind eyes missing nothing. Right on cue, he dried his weathered hands and shuffled to the register, his steps slow but steady. "I've got it, Megan," he said softly, pulling out his worn wallet. Jessica shook her head, playing her part perfectly. "No, really. You don't have to." But Henry's smile was warm, like a ray of sunlight. "We all need a hand sometimes, miss. Pay it forward when things look up." As he handed over the cash to cover Jessica's bill, Michael caught Troy smirking from the second register, his eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. The trap was snapping shut, just as Michael had expected. Jessica thanked Henry over and over, her voice thick with gratitude, before leading Lily out, the little girl clutching her hand tightly. Barely 10 minutes later, Troy sauntered up to Patricia, who was hunched over receipts at the counter, her brow furrowed. Boss," he said, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "You might want to check register 1 again. I think we're short another $20. Patricia's face darkened, her eyes narrowing. "That's impossible. I balanced it an hour ago." Megan swooped in, her expression a perfect mask of fake concern. "Actually, I saw something odd earlier when that woman couldn't pay. Henry was right there by the drawer after, while I was with another customer." Patricia's voice sharpened, echoing yesterday's doubts, but heavier with worry. "Are you saying Henry's stealing?" Troy shrugged, his casualness calculated to a T. "Just saying. Maybe check the camera." "Oh, wait. They're broken." "Convenient, right?" Michael's blood boiled. How dare they twist the truth like that?
"This is serious," Patricia said, her voice tight with distress. "If someone's stealing, I need answers now. The owner's been asking why the numbers don't add up." Megan's suggestion was slick, almost too perfect. "Why not do a surprise cash count, right now, before anyone can cover their tracks?" Patricia nodded, her face grim, and began counting the drawer, Troy and Megan hovering like vultures. Michael watched their smug expressions shift to glee as Patricia found the shortage they'd rigged. $37 missing, she announced, her face pale as a ghost. "That's over 100 this week alone. I have to do something." Michael's heart pounded. The moment was here. He watched Patricia straighten her shoulders and march toward the dish room, where Henry was working, oblivious to the storm brewing. Troy and Megan trailed her, their triumphant smirks barely hidden. "Henry," Patricia called, her voice cutting through the diner's hum. "Can I speak with you a moment?" Henry looked up, his weathered face clouding with confusion as he saw the grave looks on their faces. "Of course, Patricia. Something wrong?" Her voice strained, almost breaking. "I need to ask you directly. The register's been short all week, nearly $40 today alone. And it happened right after you were seen near the cash drawer." Michael's chest tightened. How could they do this to him? Henry's face flashed with shock, then deep, raw hurt. "You think I'm stealing?" he asked, his voice trembling. Troy piled on, his tone oozing fake regret. "We've seen you by the register multiple times when you've got no business there, and the money always vanishes right after." Henry's eyes widened, bewildered. "I was helping customers who couldn't pay their bills. I was putting money in, not taking it." Megan scoffed, her voice dripping with scorn. "On a dishwasher's pay? How convenient." Henry's hands shook, the weight of their words sinking in. "I'd never steal. Not from anyone, and especially not from this diner. This place has been my lifeline for years." Michael's heart broke. How could they humiliate him like this? Patricia looked torn, her eyes glistening. "Henry, I've always trusted you, but the numbers don't lie. And with multiple witnesses saying you've been at the register when you shouldn't." "Multiple witnesses?" Henry's voice cracked, his gaze darting around in confusion. "Megan and Troy both saw you," Patricia explained, her voice heavy. Realization hit Henry like a freight train, his face crumpling into profound sadness. Michael's chest ached so fiercely he could barely breathe. Henry didn't fight back, didn't point fingers at his accuser. He just stood there, his dignity unshaken despite the crushing humiliation. "I see," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I suppose you'll want my resignation. I'm afraid I have to let you go immediately," Patricia said, her voice thick with regret. "Company policy on theft is clear." A deathly hush fell over the diner. Customers froze, forks hovering, their faces etched with disbelief. Staff stopped mid-task, stunned that Henry could be accused of such a thing. Troy stepped forward, his voice smug. "I'll escort him to get his stuff," he offered, his satisfaction practically oozing. Michael's blood roared in his ears. "No way, that won't be necessary," he declared, his voice slicing through the silence like a blade. Michael rose from his booth, shedding his slouch and roughened speech. He stood tall, yanked off his baseball cap, and strode toward the group with the confident gait of a man in command. Patricia's eyes widened, her jaw dropping. "Mr. Carter, I had no idea you were." Clearly, Michael cut her off, his voice ringing through the now silent diner. "There's a situation here that demands the owner's attention right now." Every eye locked on him, the air electric with anticipation. What was about to happen? The silence in Carter's diner was deafening as Michael marched toward the dish room. Silverware hung frozen in midair, conversations died mid-word, and even the kitchen's usual clatter hushed. Every gaze followed Michael Carter, the diner's owner, as he closed in on the group around Henry. "Miss Carter," Patricia stammered, her face ashen. "If I'd known you were here for an inspection." "This isn't an inspection," Michael declared, his voice carrying with effortless authority. "I've been here all week, watching my business through a customer's eye." His piercing gaze swept the staff, landing like a thunderbolt on Troy and Megan. "And what I've seen, it's been eye-opening." His tone was calm but laced with fury. How could they betray his diner's heart? Troy forced a nervous laugh, his voice shaking. "Sir, we were just following theft protocol, like I told Patricia." "Enough." Michael's quiet command hit like a gavel, silencing Troy instantly. Henry stood by his dish station, bewildered, his dripping hands still gripping a towel, his eyes flicking between Michael and the others, struggling to grasp the sudden shift. Michael turned to the packed diner, his voice steady but powerful. "For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Carter. I founded this chain 15 years ago with one simple dream: treat customers like family and employees with respect. Somewhere along the way, that dream got lost." His words hung heavy, every listener riveted. Had they failed him? He pulled a small device from his jacket pocket, his movements deliberate. Patricia mentioned broken security cameras. "Funny thing, I authorized new ones 2 days ago. Hidden ones with audio." Patricia's eyes bulged, her voice faltering. but I never got any notice. I know, Michael cut in. We'll fix those communication gaps later. Right now, everyone needs to see what's really been happening in my diner. With a flick, he connected the device to the corner TV. The screen flared to life, showing crystal clear footage from yesterday. There was Troy, pocketing bills while overcharging a customer. Then Megan, voiding real transactions after customers left. And there they were, huddled at the counter, their whispers clear as day through the audio. If we frame Henry for stealing, Patricia'll fire him. I can bring in my cousin. We split the bonus. And no more pathetic old man dragging us down. Gasps erupted across the diner. Regulars leapt to their feet, faces twisted with outrage. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth, horrified. How could they? There's more, Michael said, his voice grim as he advanced the footage. Now it showed Henry, quietly slipping his own money into the register to help struggling customers. Him staying late, scrubbing neglected corners with care. Him shielding younger staff from angry patrons, taking blame for their mistakes. Michael froze the footage on Troy and Megan rigging this morning's shortage, the very one they'd pinned on Henry. This evidence was faked, Michael announced, his voice taut with controlled rage. The only thieves here are the ones pointing fingers. The diner buzzed with shock. Justice was coming. Troy's face went white as a sheet. Mr. Carter, it's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Michael's voice was soft but dead. You call framing a loyal employee a misunderstanding? Stealing from my diner, mocking a man who's faced more pain than you'll ever know, yet still shows more heart than you've ever had. Megan's sobs broke out, mascara streaking her face. Please, you didn't mean to get caught, Michael snapped, cutting her off. That's all you regret. His words were a whip, cracking through the room. He turned to Patricia, his voice heavy. Did you know Henry lives in a crumbling trailer behind this diner, paying off his late wife's medical bills? That he skips meals to help customers who can't pay? That he works through crippling arthritis because he won't burden anyone? Patricia shook her head, tears spilling over. Of course not. Exactly, Michael said, his voice breaking. Because the system I built failed him. I failed him. He faced the staff and customers, his eyes blazing. Henry Lawson is the soul of Carter's diner: compassion, dignity, service. And we let him be humiliated by two people who care only for themselves. His words echoed, a call to action. How had it come to this? Troy bolted for the door, but two burly regulars blocked him, their faces stern. Not so fast, Michael said. The police want a word with you both about the theft on video. Megan's sobs grew louder as Troy's face twisted in rage. You can't do this. We have rights. Oh, you do. Michael shot back, his voice ice cold. You have the right to stay silent. Use it. Right on cue, two police officers stepped into the diner. Michael had tipped them off earlier, sharing the footage before opening. As Troy and Megan were let out, their crimes laid bare for all to hear. The diner watched in stunned silence. Justice had arrived. Michael turned to Henry, who stood quietly, his composure unshaken despite the chaos. Henry, he said, his voice softening thick with emotion, I owe you an apology, not just for today, but for failing to ensure you were treated with the respect you deserve. Will you let me make this right? Henry met his gaze, his clear eyes free of bitterness. No apology needed, Mr. Carter. You didn't know. That's no excuse, Michael insisted, his voice fervent. But I swear this. Everyone will know now. They'll know exactly what kind of man Henry Lawson is. His promise rang out, a vow to honor the heart of his diner, and the room held its breath, waiting for what came next. The diner exploded into applause, a thunderous roar that shook the wall. Customers leapt to their feet, their cheers a heartfelt salute to Henry, the elderly dishwasher whose quiet kindness had touched their lives in ways they'd never forget. As the police car hauled Troy and Megan away, their former co-workers stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide. What a lesson. It hit them hard. Character, not position, defines a person's true worth. Michael's heart swelled with pride and resolve. Had he finally set things right? The next morning, Carter's diner opened as usual. But oh, how the air had changed. Word of Michael's undercover mission and the shocking takedown of Troy and Megan's cruel scheme had raced through the small town like wildfire. Every booth and counter seat was packed. But these weren't just curious gossip seekers. They'd come to rally around Henry. Michael arrived early, swapping his usual sharp business suit for a simple button-down shirt. No more absentee owner. He was here, present, ready to lead with heart. Could he truly make a difference now?
Henry stepped through the door right on time, as always, but his usual steady stride faltered under the weight of all those eyes on him. Customers called his name, their smiles warm, their words brimming with encouragement. "Henry, you're a hero," one shouted. The old man nodded politely, his weathered face flushing, clearly overwhelmed by the love pouring his way. Was he ready for this spotlight? Michael's voice cut through the buzz. "Henry," he called, gesturing toward his office. "Can we talk for a moment?" The diner hushed, every ear straining, every heart wondering, what's next for Henry? Inside the cramped office, Michael motioned for Henry to sit, his own heart pounding with purpose. "I couldn't sleep last night," he began, his voice earnest. "I kept thinking about everything I've learned this week. Your struggles, your incredible character, and how my business lost its way from the values I swore to uphold." Henry sat with quiet dignity, his gnarled hands folded in his lap, his eyes steady but soft. "Mr. Carter, I've always been grateful for this job," he said, his voice low. "It came when no one else would give me a chance." Michael leaned forward, his gaze intense. "That's exactly why we're here, Henry. You've been washing dishes for 7 years, working harder than anyone, staying late without a single complaint, showing more dedication than folks half your age. Who does that?" He slid a folder across the desk, his hands steady but his heart racing. "This isn't just a thank you, Henry. It's proof of how much you mean to this company." Henry opened the folder, his eyes widening as he scanned the pages. "I don't understand," he murmured, his voice trembling. "It's simple," Michael said, his smile warm. "Starting today, you're the floor manager. It comes with a big salary bump, full benefits, and hours that won't wear you down. No more back-breaking work for you." Henry stared at the papers, disbelief etched on his face. "But I've never managed anyone." Michael's grin wide. "You've got something better than experience. Integrity and compassion. You know the soul of Carter's Diner better than anyone. The rest, you'll learn it." Was this really happening? Before Henry could protest, Michael pushed another folder forward, his voice softening. "I called your daughter Sarah in Seattle last night." Henry's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "You talked to Sarah? She doesn't know about She knows everything now," Michael said gently. "The trailer, the medical bills, all of it." "She was heartbroken, Henry, knowing you've been carrying this alone." Tears glistened in Henry's eyes, his voice barely a whisper. "I never wanted to burden her." "She knew you'd say that," Michael said with a soft chuckle. "She told me to tell you love isn't a burden, it's a privilege." He tapped the second folder. "Open it. You'll find the deed to a small house just 3 blocks away. It's modest but cozy, close to work, and it's yours, no rent, no mortgage. Think of it as 7 years of bonuses you never got." Henry's hands shook as he opened the folder, his eyes locking on the deed with his name. "Mr. Carter, this is too much. I can't accept it. It's not enough," Michael countered, his voice firm but warm. "And one more thing. I settled your wife's remaining medical bills with the hospital. They're gone, Henry. Paid in full." At that, Henry's stoic facade crumbled. Tears streamed down his lined face, years of silent struggle and unshakable dignity giving way to raw, overwhelming gratitude. "Why would you do this for me?" he choked out, his voice breaking. Michael's own eyes misted, his throat tight. "Because you showed me what I'd forgotten, Henry. A business isn't about profits and growth. It's about people. Every day you've lived the values I only preach." He stood, extending his hand, his voice fervent. "So thank you, Henry, not just for your service, but for teaching me how to be a better boss, a better person." Could one man's kindness really change everything? When they stepped out of the office, the diner erupted again, applause crashing like a wave. Patricia stood by the counter, her eyes red from tears but her smile radiant. The staff swarmed Henry, their voices a chorus of congratulations for his promotion. "You've earned this, Henry," one called. Michael raised his hand, his voice carrying over the crowd. "One more thing," he announced to the packed diner. "Starting today, Carter's Diner is changing, forever. Every employee will get a living wage, full benefits, and emergency aid when life gets tough. No one working here should ever have to choose between bills and helping others." The customers roared their approval, their cheers shaking the rafters. Was this the dawn of a new era? Henry stood beside Michael, still dazed, his eyes wide as the reality sank in. Amy, the young mother Henry had helped time and again, stepped forward with her kids, clutching an envelope. "We took up a collection for you, Henry," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not much," but Michael raised a hand, his smile gentle. Henry's expenses are covered, Amy, but let's do something better with that money. Let's start the Henry Lawson Community Fund to help folks with medical bills or hard times. The crowd cheered again, their support a living testament to Henry's impact. Could one man's heart inspire so much? Henry looked around, his gaze lingering on the faces of people he'd served for years. Customers whose names he knew by heart, whose kids he'd watched grow, whose burdens he'd lightened with small, selfless acts. Their smiles mirrored the quiet kindness he'd given so free. In the weeks that followed, Henry settled into his new home and role as floor manager. He didn't need to work anymore, but he stayed, not out of duty but love. The diner wasn't just a job, it was his community, his purpose, his family. Every day, when Henry walked through those doors, he wasn't the struggling dishwasher from a rundown trailer anymore. He was the man whose compassion had reshaped a business and a town. Wasn't that the true measure of a life well lived? Michael kept his word, diving into his business with new passion. The changes he launched rippled across all his diners, forging a culture where kindness matched profit in value. As for Troy and Meg, their names became cautionary tales, whispered in the industry as a stark reminder: character outshines cunning. True worth isn't what you grab when no one's looking. It's what you give when you think no one sees. And Henry? He'd shown them all what that meant. Could anyone ask for a greater legacy?